Okay, thank you for joining me for this module. This module is all around connector access and DLP. So a really big topic and one that's super important. So we're talking at this level here. We're talking about the connector level. So when people create connectors, create connections to connectors, which connectors are available and what people can do with them. So connection creation authentication. So apps and flows establish connection to the data source using pre-built or custom connector in the context of the user creating them. So if you create a flow and you use an Outlook connector, it's going to create an Outlook connection instantly in that flow connecting to your mailbox. And then of course you can change that afterwards. But that authentication, when you set up connectors, you can specify how authentication is established, and they should be custom. So DLP policies should be unique across. Should match the unique needs of the environment requirements as well. So what does DLP actually do? So DLP, it's the recipe that defines the types of apps and flows that can be created. So there's over 500 connectors. So what you might want to do is block most of them and only allow certain ones that you approve of. So data loss prevention policies enforce the rules which not only which ones are available, but also which ones can work together. Connectors are classified at either business data only or no business data allowed. A connector in business data only group can only be used with other connectors from that group in the same app or flow. So you can't have business apps talking to non-business apps. Tenant admins define these policies that apply to all environments, and you can fully block usage of third-party connectors as well at an environment level. So you have tenant level DLP policies and you have environment level DLP policies. So Power Platform supports at tenant. The key difference between these two things is tenant level policies can be associated with more than one environment, while the environment level policies can only apply to a single environment at a time. Tenant level policies can only be created by admin roles such as Power Platform Administrator. Tenant level policies are multi-environment. They can apply to one, more than one, or all environments. These policies can be viewed and updated by any tenant admin, even if they were not the original creator of that policy. Environment admins can also view tenant level policy settings since they do not impact data flow for their environments. They're not allowed to edit those policies that haven't created, but they can view them. A key limitation for tenant level policies is that they do not support custom connectors setup. So custom connectors are tied to a particular environment, so you can't create tenant level policies for custom connectors. Environment level policies, they can be created by designated environment admins and have a one-to-one mapping to a single environment, so only one DLP policy per environment. All environment admins for the applicable environment as well as tenant admins can view and update environment level policies. Environment level policies do support custom connectors, although DLP through DLP PowerShell commandlets, but also now in the UI as well. So a lot's happened since these slides, and you can actually do a lot more with DLP. So I highly recommend doing a bit of research on this if it's interesting to you. Connector classification is one of three things. Business, a given Power App or Power Automate resource can use one or more connectors from the business group. If a Power App or Power Automate resource uses a business connector, it cannot use any non-business connector. So it's isolating business connectors together. In the non-business group, a given Power App or Power Automate resource can use one or more connectors from the non-business group. But if a resource uses a non-business connector, it cannot use a business connector. So you're isolating these two groups of connectors. If something is blocked, if a connector is blocked, it can't be used anywhere. It can't be used anywhere. You cannot block standard connectors and Dataverse connectors. They can't be blocked because they are essential for the running of the Microsoft services. So how do you go about setting up a DLP strategy? So it's about drawing these boundaries around what connectors can be used together versus not in a given app or flow. So work out what those are. In this example, if admins have put SharePoint in the business category and Dropbox in the non-business category, then Power Platform makers can no longer make apps and flows that use these two connectors together. Makers can continue to use SharePoint standalone together with things like Outlook and things like that to leverage that capability, but they can't use anything in the non-business category. Similarly, you can use Dropbox with Gmail or Dropbox with Box or Dropbox with SQL Server because they're in the non-business category. It's critical to take time and carefully identify all the relevant business data use connectors and isolate them from the rest of the connectors. Do note that the name business and non-business to these connectors is not of any special meaning. It's just two buckets. It's just two buckets that are isolated from each other. The net effect is the same on both. There's no priority in terms of business and non-business. It's just important to know that. One final tip here is the blocks category. Use it with care. In this example, we've only got two: Twitter and HTTP. This allows their use all together in all apps and flows. So just be wary of that. Use it. Don't be too trigger happy is the advice here. So DLP policies should be customized for each environment. So you could have one blanket policy for all environments. So you could use all except. So you could do a most restrictive policy applies to a combination of connectors. So you would have a policy across the whole organization and then have exceptions based on those particular needs. How these things are enforced at design time, users are prompted, and also at runtime, if something has changed, then you'll see that at runtime as well. Users will be notified of DLP changes, and they'll be told that it is part of DLP as well. Where do you manage these? So there's Power Platform admins as a connector itself, so you can create policies in Power Automate. There's also in the admin center you can create policies and in PowerShell as well. Here's an example of a DLP strategy. So this is a sample organization, and what they want to do is they want to support user and team productivity to create their own productivity scenarios and also business applications in addition to Center of Excellence activity management. So here you can see first of all, they have a restrictive tenant-wide restrictive DLP policy that applies to all environments in the tenant, except some specific environments that they've excluded from the policy scope. So they have any new environments and Contoso environment. That's the most restrictive policy. Also applies to default. Contoso admins have created another shared environment for users to create apps for user and team productivity. This is an associated tenant-level DLP policy that isn't as risk-averse as default policy and allows makers to use connectors like Azure services in addition to Office 365 as well. So you have this this shared environment here that has less restrictive policy. Then you have another DLP that covers, it's a tenant policy, and it includes environments. It includes these environments. So for the business units to create line of business applications, create the development, test and production environment for their tax and audit subsidiaries across various countries. So here you can see they have these policies set up for these environments. and what these do is they have a well-defined set of connectors, and these are tenant level. A dedicated tenant level policy. And it's central IT manage these. Sorry, this one here, another one which is central IT managed. There's dev, test and prod in there for to develop relevant applications across the business. And these connectors, again, because these have different, the key thing here is that this one is very restrictive. This one is less restrictive, but allows people to work in that and create some stuff if they need to. These here are as restrictive as this, plus what is required for these particular applications in these particular regions. And then here you've got another policy, and then here you've got a very special purpose environment which has its own dedicated connectors, has its own custom connectors, so that needs an environment level policy to manage those. So you can see you need to think a lot about data policies, and it's good to establish a default policy early on, then grant exceptions to that. Make sure that you have a policy that's covering new environments, so it inherits that straight away. Changes can take a few minutes to effect, so just be wary of that. Policies can't be applied at the user level, only at the environment level. You can't restrict it per user. It needs to be per environment, so consider that when you're building your environment strategy as well. You can use PowerShell, and you can use the admin connectors in Power Automate to manage the policies, which is really useful. And users of resources in environments can view the policies that apply to those resources, so they can view what is the DLP strategy for the connectors that they're going to be using. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of connector access in DLP, and I'll see you on the next video.